What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. This is Travis here, and in this one I'm going to be doing a little bit of work on my RODI mixing station. Basically, I'm going to be breaking down the water storage side. Both of those white barrels are about 55 gallons a piece, and I'll get into the reason for doing this here in a minute. But overall, I'm breaking down the entire side and replacing it with one 165 gallon barrel that you see here on the screen. So let's go and get into it. So I went ahead and got this barrel at a Chemtainer factory here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and it was brand spanking new off the lot for about $200. Now it's made out of high density polyurethane, and it's specifically made to hold water. It's never had anything in it, and that's exactly what I was looking for. Now when it came to installing this, I really wanted to reuse the wood, the bulkheads, and the PVC piping from the mixing station already, and it actually worked out that way. I basically went ahead and cut a PVC back as far as I could from one of the bulkheads, which allowed me to reuse that one. It left just enough PVC on the end for it to connect to another elbow without any issues. On top of that, I went ahead and used the long piece of red PVC just to reattach this to the mixing station pump, and then of course I reused the wood to make another stand for this barrel. So I will admit the hardest part of this whole build was reusing the wood from the previous stand, mainly because it just wasn't long enough to get across the full 32 inches of width that the barrel has. Now because of that, I had to redesign the stand layout to make it not only effective to hold that 1,700 pounds of weight, but to also use the wood that I had on hand. Now I could have easily went to Home Depot and bought a couple more 2x4s, but I wanted to make a point of reusing this wood just because I didn't feel like wasting it. Now when it comes to the stand layout, I actually made the outer frame with the longer 4 2x4s that were holding up the upper barrel, and that gives me the 32 inches by 32 inches. Now because there wasn't any boards that were long enough to go completely across for bracing, I went ahead and made this inner stand out of those boards and then just attached them with what boards I did have. Now, this actually worked out great because there's a ton of support in the middle, and I don't have to worry about it flexing or bowing underneath that 1,700 pounds of weight. After that was done, I simply went ahead and added some plywood on top to make it look pretty decent, and then it was good to go. Once I finished the stand, it was time to move on to drilling the barrel. Now, it's just like the previous ones. I just lined up the 1-inch bulkhead with the mixing station and drilled with my my wooden drill bits. And it worked out great, at least the drilling portion of it. Now, I did kind of have a head scratcher for a little bit trying to figure out how the hell am I going to get the bulkhead to the bottom of the barrel. And I actually used a broom and a Phillips screwdriver and a couple zip ties. Now, I know that doesn't make sense right now, but basically I used the broom handle and slid the Phillips screwdriver through and attached it via zip tie so it wouldn't fall out. And then I slid the bulkhead over the handle of the screwdriver and attached it or held it in place with zip ties, just enough that it could come off if I wiggled it, but it would still take some effort. Now, I basically reached down into the barrel, slid the bulkhead through the hole, and then attached it with the nut, and it worked out great. I got it on the first try, and I was pretty surprised. Now I also went ahead and drilled for the float valve. I did go a little bit above the 160 gallon mark just because there was plenty of room above that to have a little bit more water. But it was pretty easy. I just reused one of the float valves, and I now have an extra one just in case something happens. Alright, now that we got the installation done, let's go and talk about the reason behind this change. Now it all comes down to the barrels that I used previously. Now if you guys saw that whole build series, the fish room build series, you know that I got these barrels here locally, and they are used rain barrels. What were they used before? I don't know, but I've been using them for a couple years now, and I had zero issues, and I've actually had one on my previous system with no problems. But for whatever reason, the two barrels I had, even after bleaching them both for a week, running vinegar through both of them for a week, I was getting TDS creep. And basically what I mean is I went from 0 TDS coming on my RODI system to up to 10 to 15 TDS in those barrels. There's actually 10 on the top and almost 15 on the bottom barrel after just a couple days of the water being in there. So that means that something in that plastic is leaching into the RODI water, which is normal for RODI water because it has 0 ions and it's trying to pull whatever it can into it to make up for it. And 15 TDS on a barrel that's supposed to have 0, or in water that's supposed to have 0, definitely means that something is coming out of that plastic. Now the barrel itself actually smelled like a chemical, which I didn't pick up on before. I definitely didn't I didn't notice it, at least until I had the RODI water in it. Now, with that being said, that wasn't the conclusion I came to at first. There were some things going on in my frag tank that really kind of showed some red flags that something was going wrong. Now, the first thing I noticed was I was getting a little bit of hair algae on the rack. Now, I'm not here to brag, but I don't have algae in my tanks. Not with my type of feeding methods, my skimming, or my water changes. I just don't have it. So because it was showing up, I figured, well, maybe it was the marine pier blocks, because I did just sell 2 of them and replace them. So that's a good chunk of biological filtration. And, you know, after a couple weeks, it was still growing. So I'm like, no, that can't be it. And then I looked into the amount of food I was feeding, the nori and the mysis shrimp. So I went ahead and cut that in half, and then it seemed to still keep on growing. So I knew that something else was going on. On top of that, Reggie, the eel, he refused to eat for about a week and a half, which is definitely not normal. He goes out of his way to take food whenever he possibly can. And so that was definitely a concern for me. Now, even further, my sailfin tang and my yellow-eye coal tang, their colors pretty much disappeared. They were really pale. They refused to eat. So yeah, everything pointed to water quality. So I went ahead and started looking at the barrels, smelling the barrels. That was a red flag. I tested the TDS, and then actually as soon as I saw it hit about 15 TDS on that bottom barrel, I literally just drained the barrels out, and I knew that I was going to replace them. I didn't care how much it was going to cost or where I was going to drive to get this barrel. I was going to replace it with something better and brand new. Now, I will say this is a little bit of a lesson learned just on the aspect of trying to figure out what was in used barrels previously. That is really the key. Like I said, I've used these barrels plenty of times with zero issues, and this might be just a fluke that maybe these barrels came from a farm that had like a pesticide or something in them. Who knows? But regardless, you need to research what was in the barrels previously before you decide if you're going to use them or not. Obviously, cleaning them with the bleach works. Cleaning them with vinegar, both of those steps work to keeping these barrels good. But depending on the type of plastic they're made out of will depend on if they absorb or leach anything into the water. Either way, it's a lesson learned on my end. But I feel that for the amount of money that I have invested into this fish room, to the 300-gallon tank, I might as well have just bought this barrel in the beginning because, there are some corners you can cut, but when it comes to water quality, there's no shortcuts in that aspect. Now, I've already done a 55% water change on the frag system with this new water in this new barrel, and I can already notice a difference with the hair algae. It's pretty much just coming off, flaking off, and Reggie ate for the first time in a couple weeks, so I'm really happy about that. And things are kind of getting back to normal, and yeah, so it is what it is. I can't really pinpoint the whole problem or what chemical it is, but either way, it turned out positively, and that's what matters. And I also have 175 gallons of water on hand, so that means I can do a 50-gallon water change on the 300. So yippee for me, right? Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, put it in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Peace.